A grim-faced party member calls out to Ed to get his attention in a serious tone. The young hero turns to Ed and bluntly informs him that he does not need to come with them tomorrow. Gathering the group around a tavern table, the hero hesitates awkwardly before delivering the difficult news. He clarifies his previous statement by explicitly stating that Ed is no longer required to come along. When Ed tries to laugh it off as a drunken joke, the hero slams his mug down and shouts that they genuinely don't need him anymore starting tomorrow. The party members look on with steely expressions as the leader explains this wasn't sudden, but a decision they discussed many times without him. He finalizes the rejection by stating that removing Ed is the consensus of the entire group. Ed panics and desperately reminds them of the solemn promise they all made to defeat the Demon King together. While Ed begs to know if this is a joke, the female mage looks him in the eye and coldly denies it. The armored paladin backs her up, looking down with a stern expression to confirm they are completely serious about this decision. Softening his tone slightly, the hero acknowledges that Ed was talented and helpful when he first joined the party. However, the atmosphere shifts instantly as he drops a sharp conjunction to pivot to the problem at hand. He questions Ed's recent behavior, asking him to reflect on how he has been acting these days. While the rest of the party trained for the upcoming battle, Ed remains stagnant, cutting corners on tasks and enjoying his downtime. Declaring they have endured enough of his lack of motivation, the hero expresses a faint hope that Ed might find his drive again someday. Resigned to his fate, Ed lowers his head in defeat and whispers his acceptance of their decision. The hero delivers the final verdict, officially declaring that Ed is banished from the hero's party. Ed stands alone as the severed bond hangs heavy in the air between him and his former comrades. Suddenly, a system notification visible only to Ed declares that a condition has been met and only 10 minutes remain until his return. The party recoils when Ed starts acting strange, asking if the shock of banishment has driven him insane, though he claims to be perfectly sane. With a twisted smile, Ed asks them to take a parting gift, revealing that his true wish has finally been granted. Dark energy swirls around him as he activates a mysterious power that rips a swirling hole in the air. The party members gasp in shock and confusion as a massive pile of books comes tumbling out of the void. Ed proudly stands over the stack of tomes and introduces them as a comprehensive instruction manual for the party. The hero stares in disbelief, asking if Ed has been hiding a dimensional storage skill this whole time. Furious, the hero demands to know why Ed kept such a useful utility skill secret when it could have been utilized in so many ways. Ignoring the outburst, Ed coolly deflects the question and urges the hero to focus on reading the provided material instead. He explains that he compiled data from all their battles to create efficient training methods and guides for acquiring new skills. Handing over his legacy, Ed expresses his hope that these manuals will serve as a reference for their future growth. The priestess opens a book and is stunned to find details on a specific magic spell she needed to learn but didn't even know the name of. Ed nods simply, accepting the situation with a calm demeanor. Turning to the priestess, he hands her a separate sheet of detailed notes, advising her that she will understand the complex magic better as she matures. The warrior is flabbergasted when Ed produces a highly sophisticated map, revealing hidden passages and traps that the veteran had completely missed. When the warrior demands to know how he acquired such intel, Ed dismisses the question as a trade secret since he is no longer part of the party. Overcome with guilt, the warrior stammers and accidentally refers to Ed with a title of extreme reverence. The mage bows her head low in shame, begging forgiveness for her lack of insight into his secret contributions. She continues her apology, horrified that she tried to banish him while he was silently supporting them with such hard work. The paladin laments his own incompetence, admitting that Ed is doing a far better job than the veterans who dared to scold him. Declaratively, the paladin shouts that they are rescinding the banishment, asking if anyone objects to bringing Ed back immediately. The hero smiles with deep shame and formally asks Ed to rejoin the party. Ed instantly rejects the offer, stating firmly that he absolutely cannot go back with them. The three party members freeze in stunned silence, their faces blank with shock at the refusal. Ed explains that it would be illogical to reverse the banishment so quickly after they just kicked him out. Cheering them on one last time to defeat the Demon King, he abruptly turns to leave. Desperate to stop him, the party yells for him to wait and at least say a proper goodbye. Ignoring their pleas, Ed sprints away through the bustling market streets, leaving his confused former comrades behind. He dashes frantically through the alleyways, checking his internal clock as he puts distance between himself and the group. A massive smile breaks across his face as he sees the notification that only 10 seconds remain until his return. Diving into a secluded hiding spot between buildings, he begins the final countdown as the timer hits 4 seconds. Crouching in the shadows, he confirms the location is safe and waits for the final second to tick away. The system announces the execution of world transmigration as the process begins. Ed's body distorts and vanishes as he is pulled from reality by a powerful force. He streaks through the dimensional void, traveling at unimaginable speeds beyond the physical realm. Landing safely in a pristine white hall, Ed remarks that it has been a while since he last visited this space. Stretching his stiff limbs, he complains that the one-year mission took a long time but declares he fulfilled his promise to do his best. With a shout of triumph, he commands the entity in the room to finally take him home. Ed sits before a crystal ball displaying his former party, waiting for the next stage of his journey now that his mission is complete. Ed sighs and resolves to remain silent until the end, questioning who exactly he is addressing within this mysterious space. He reflects on his origins, recalling the peaceful and ordinary mercenary life he lived before being suddenly summoned to this strange realm. He remembers arriving at the blank cover of his journey, finding nothing but a mysterious book of pure white lying in wait. Faced with confusion about his purpose, he realized there was only a single door available to him. Steeling himself, he decided to open the book and read it regardless of how terrible the contents might be. The manual instructed him to join a party for half a year, gain their trust, and then get exiled to meet the conditions for returning. Despite his confusion, he read that a new door would appear leading to the next world, but once opened, it could never be accessed again. Ed recoils in horror as he calculates that visiting 100 worlds will entrap him in this nightmare for at least a century. Darkness consumes the panel as the crushing reality of his century-long sentence washes over him. Clenching his fist in triumph, he shouts at the empty room and demands a celebratory atmosphere now that he has finally succeeded. With a sharp gesture, he points to the crystal ball, marking the completion of his long and arduous journey through 100 worlds. Exhausted, he leans heavily against the furniture, bitter that the silent god watching him has still said absolutely nothing. Catching his reflection in the surface, he admits that retaining his youth is the one small mercy of this endless loop. He explains that no matter how his body changes in other worlds, everything resets to his original state the moment he returns to this white void. Having overcome a century of adventures across 100 worlds, he stands tall with the body and spirit of a man in his 20s. Laughing manically, he mocks himself as merely a guy who lived a long life that no one, not even his mother, cares about. Fragments of memories and faces from his 100 lifetimes flash through his mind in a chaotic swirl of nostalgia and pain. The chaotic memories fade into a quiet, bittersweet chuckle as he composes himself. Declaring that he has done enough, he demands that the entity fulfill its promise and finally take him home. Staring into the shifting light, he whispers his plea once more to be returned to his true home. A blinding light erupts from the pedestal, leaving Ed wide-eyed with shock as the number 0 appears. He realizes the crystal ball is granting him a reward, recalling that it gives him a mysterious, exiled skill every time he is banished. He watches as the system grants him what he arbitrarily has named his exiled skills. He reviews his arsenal, which includes dimensional storage, an auto-mapping system, eyes that see talent, and the ability to replicate items seen only once. He acknowledges that these accumulated powers are the only reason an ordinary person like him managed to survive in the hero's party. Staring at the glowing orb, he mutters that he doesn't care about rewards anymore, knowing this is the final one. However, with a pragmatic shrug, he decides he might as well accept the gift if it's being offered. Reaching out, he places his hand on the smooth surface of the crystal ball to claim his final prize. His expression shifts to one of disbelief and a nervous smile creeps onto his face as he processes the new ability. He chuckles in disbelief, marveling that the system has sent him yet another incredibly powerful skill. He notes that this is the first time he has received a single-use ability, but the effect description leaves him stunned. Deciding the skill is far too valuable to waste, he resolves to save it for the very last minute before noticing a shift in the room. He turns his gaze toward the empty expanse, realizing the exit has appeared in an unexpected direction. Sensing fluctuations in the fabric of the space, he wonders if a door has appeared once again. He freezes, realizing that a door has never appeared on that side before, as they were always positioned sequentially next to the previous one. His heart races as the implication of the door's unique placement hits him. He identifies it as Door 000, the entry point that existed even before his journey began. Tears of joy well up in his eyes as he realizes this is finally the door leading back to his original world. After a century of longing, he is certain that opening this door will return him to the world of his birth. A cold realization stops him dead as he wonders if 100 years have also passed in his original world, given that time usually flows normally. Ed stares at the door, questioning what lies on the other side and what has become of everyone he knew after 100 years. In a fit of rage, he screams at God, accusing the deity of stealing a century of his life and forcing him into this endless cycle. He laments that he was forced into labor without ever understanding the reason, purpose, or meaning behind his suffering. Desperate and furious, he demands that God use his accumulated skills to make up for the lost time right now. He scoffs at the idea of this being a reward, questioning if this empty achievement is all he gets for his struggles. The room remains silent, and Ed realizes with bitter resignation that God still has nothing to say to him. Suddenly, a new object materializes on the floor, catching Ed's attention and breaking his train of thought. He picks up the object, realizing it is another book, and notices strange digits inscribed under the number plate of the door. Opening the book, he reads that the digits represent the time that has passed in that specific world since he left it. Hope surges through him as he deduces that he might be able to return to the exact moment he was first kidnapped. He rushes to the door labeled 000 and tries to force it open, desperate to return to his original timeline. To his horror, the handle refuses to turn, and he realizes the door is locked tight. Defeated, he looks down at the book in his hand and discovers a key included with the manual. He reads the title "Commemoration Service of Your Total Expulsion" and curses, remarking that no one would ever want such a terrible celebration. The manual explains that the key allows him to revisit a past world once, and by using it again on any door there, he can return to the White Room. It further clarifies that upon his return, the door to his original world, 000, will finally open, but the key will be lost forever. Ed is initially annoyed that he has to go back to another world first, complaining that he doesn't need this extra step. However, he pauses and reconsiders, realizing that the condition for return is simply to be exiled again. A devious grin spreads across his face as he realizes he just needs to go to a suitable world and get himself kicked out immediately. He concludes that if he just uses the key on a nearby door and gets exiled quickly, it will be an easy win. With his plan set, he cheerfully wonders which world he should choose for this quick trip. He skips past the doors, humming to himself as he considers his options, feeling a sense of nostalgia. He stops in front of door 001, remembering the hardships he faced in that very first world. He recalls how he was thrown into that world with no knowledge, possessing only a guard skill that was useless for joining a hero's party. He reflects on how his accidental flag-bearer skill was the only reason fate brought him and the hero together in the first place. However, the real struggle began after joining, as he lacked the strength to fight or any useful skills to contribute. Living in constant fear of being discarded, he desperately searched for any way to be useful to the party. He lists the menial tasks he took on, from carrying luggage to arranging lodging, doing whatever he could think of to stay relevant. He wonders what his former party members thought of him back then, admitting he never really knew. Glancing at the number plate on door 001, he notes that 10 years have passed in that world since his exile. He muses that while they kicked him out halfway through the journey, he is curious about what happened afterward. He speculates that 10 years should have been enough time for them to defeat the Demon King and bring peace to the world. Making up his mind, he decides to treat this forced trip as a sightseeing tour of a peaceful world. As he inserts the key, he admits that while the journey was terrible, saying he hated everything about it wouldn't be entirely true. He acknowledges that amidst the hardships, there were also good times worth remembering. With a soft, "I've missed you," he unlocks the door and steps through to revisit the beginning of his 100-year journey. The scene shifts to a grassy field, marking his arrival back in the first world he ever visited. He looks around the familiar landscape, questioning if this is indeed the same place he remembers. Standing in the open field, he notes that the scenery is exactly as he recalls from his first arrival. He smiles, relieved that his memory hasn't failed him after all this time. Ed panics and quickly secures the key, realizing that losing his only ticket home would be a complete disaster. Standing on a hill, he spots the town in the distance and confirms that the landscape matches his memories. He reasons that since the Demon King was defeated 10 years ago, there shouldn't be any dangerous monsters roaming this area. Despite his logical conclusion, he decides to stay alert and confirm the safety of the area for himself. His instincts scream a warning as he notices a sudden disturbance in the peaceful surroundings. The ground erupts violently as a colossal serpent bursts from the earth to ambush him. Ed reacts instantly, leaping backward to dodge the massive creature's crushing strike. The giant snake towers over him, its slit pupil focusing on its prey with deadly intent. Ed stares up in confusion, wondering why such a high-level boss monster is spawning in a beginner zone. Deciding this is a perfect opportunity, he activates Wanderer's Treasury to retrieve a weapon for combat. He draws a sword and smiles, relieved to confirm that he can use his Exiled skills normally in this world. As the serpent lunges with its maw wide open, Ed calmly prepares to test another defensive ability. The monster clamps its jaws shut with bone-crushing force, but its teeth shatter against an invisible barrier. Ed reveals that he activated Impregnable Wall, a skill that renders him completely invincible to physical attacks. He taunts the beast, noting with a smirk that its fangs are far too weak to reach him. The snake recoils in pain and rage, its eyes glowing as it prepares a magical counterattack. Ed laughs fearlessly at the creature and challenges it to show him what else it can do. The monster opens its mouth and unleashes a torrent of magic-dissolving acid breath. The lethal liquid pours down in a massive wave, threatening to melt everything in its path. Unimpressed, Ed identifies the nature of the attack and casts Curtain of Absorption to neutralize the magic. With the acid completely nullified, he declares that this is the finale and steps into attack. A blinding flash of steel cuts through the air as he executes a single, precision strike. The blade slices cleanly through the giant serpent, bisecting its massive body in an instant. Ed lands gracefully as the monster's carcass falls apart and crashes to the ground behind him. Sheathing his sword, he cheerfully decides to take a leisurely pace for this second playthrough of his life. Ed returns to the first world he ever visited and feels a sudden wave of nostalgia for the place. He recalls how his original fate bound him to join the hero's party and serve them faithfully. Smiling to himself, he realizes that this time he is truly free to wander wherever he pleases. Ed considers going on a shopping spree since he noticed his treasure box is overflowing with gold and silver. He jokes about selling steamed buns or armor designed to look like the gear worn by the legendary heroes. With a satisfied smirk, he presents a massive pile of buns stamped with the hero's mark. He laughs at his ridiculous entrepreneurial ideas while admitting a strange desire to actually eat them. His cheerful expression vanishes instantly as he notices a shocking sight that defies all his expectations. Ed sprints toward the nearby town, his heart racing as he desperately tries to figure out what went wrong. He arrives only to find the town completely falling apart and reduced to rubble. Staring in horror, he sees the massive stone fortifications of the city shattered and hollowed out by some violent force. Walking through the ruins, he wonders why a demonic beast would attack if the Demon King was already defeated. He questions if the catastrophic destruction was actually the result of a brutal civil war between humans. Knowing how humans often turn on each other after a common enemy dies, he struggles to accept this grim outcome. Ed passes a lonely skeleton leaning against the remains of a house, emphasizing the scale of the tragedy. He inspects a piece of charred debris and realizes that this level of damage was far more than simple neglect. An old man scavenges nearby and asks the young traveler why he has come to a place with nothing left. Assuming Ed was misinformed about finding riches, the man offers him a small scrap of what little he has. Ed declines the offer and explains that he did not come here to scavenge for rubble or treasure. Wiping sweat from his brow, Ed begs the man to explain why the town is in such a wretched condition. The old man is puzzled and explains that the town has been a graveyard of ruins for 2 years now. He reveals the devastating truth that the Demon King's army completely wiped out the town in a massive assault. Ed is paralyzed with shock, unable to comprehend how the Demon King's army could have been active so recently. He demands to know what the man means, insisting that the army should have been defeated long ago. The man clarifies that the Demon King's forces have been rampaging across the entire world for many years. Frantic and sweating, Ed asks about the fate of the country's prince, the hero Alexis. The old man recalls how Alexis was on the verge of victory 10 years ago before everything fell apart. He delivers a crushing blow by stating that Alexis died 5 years ago fighting the very army he was supposed to defeat. Ed laughs nervously in denial, refusing to believe that a true hero could die so easily. The old man gestures toward the wasteland around them, stating that the town itself is the ultimate proof of the hero's failure. He laments that if hero Alexis were still alive, this world might not have been plunged into such darkness. Ed desperately demands to know what happened to the other two members of the hero's party. The man speculates that they likely died alongside their leader, as no word of their survival ever reached the masses. He describes how the incredible hope the heroes once gave the world has curdled into a bitter nightmare. The common people are left in the dark, knowing only that their supposed saviors are gone. Bidding Ed farewell, the old man remarks that whether one is a prince or a hero, death is the ultimate end. Ed stands alone in the silence, his mind spinning with the horrifying realization that the hero is dead. He wonders how a party of real heroes could have lost everything so completely after he was exiled from their ranks. A dark thought takes root as he begins to wonder if his departure was the actual catalyst for the party's destruction. Although he tries to dismiss it as conceit, he is haunted by the possibility that losing a mere luggage bearer led to this unreasonable ending. Ed stares into the void of the undead souls drifting before him, his expression one of solemn realization. He clenches his hand to activate his exiled skills, preparing to use the powers he gathered during his 100-year journey. Summoning the Akashic Compass, he commands it to point towards the exact location where hero Alexis died. A bitter smile crosses his face as the compass locks onto a location, confirming that the hero is truly dead. He notes the direction the needle is pointing and realizes it leads straight toward the Demon King's castle. Next, he asks the compass to locate where his warrior friend Gonzo met his end. The needle points to the exact same coordinates, confirming that his two friends fought and died together. Ed sits in the shadows of a carriage, questioning the purpose of his journey and what he hopes to achieve. He wonders if he is simply traveling to their death place to build a grave for the comrades he lost. With a heavy heart, he asks the compass to show him where the elf Tia Lunarisha died. A sharp chime rings out from the device as it displays the message, "Not applicable." Ed freezes in shock as the compass face swirls with mist, refusing to provide a death location. Desperately changing his question, he asks the compass to show him the current location of Tia Lunarisha. The mist clears to reveal a crystal-clear image of Tia, proving that she is still somewhere in this world. Realizing she is alive, Ed wastes no time and activates another high-speed movement skill. He shouts, "Hermes Dash," and launches himself forward with explosive force. The ground shatters beneath his feet as he tears through the landscape at a breakneck pace. Gravity becomes a mere suggestion as he sprints across vertical terrain, his focus solely on reaching her. His eyes burn with intense determination as he whispers her name, refusing to lose another friend. A massive shockwave trails behind him as he blasts through the forest, leveling trees in his wake. He screams Tia's name into the wind, pushing his body to its absolute physical limit. A vision of Tia flashes through his mind as he yells out the confirmation that she is indeed alive. The world blurs into a fisheye distortion as he crosses vast distances in mere moments. He bursts onto a lakeside scene, startling the local wildlife as he roars her name. It activates Mirage Shift to bypass the obstacles, setting a 1-hour timer for his desperate sprint. Scaling a massive mountain range in seconds, he leaves a trail of dust while the timer ticks down. He blazes through a freezing blizzard without slowing down, with 35 minutes remaining on the clock. A giant dragon snaps its jaws at empty air as he speeds past it with 17 minutes left. He skids to a halt in a dark cavern just as the timer hits 0 and the skill effect wears off. With his concealment gone, the gargoyles nesting in the cave immediately swoop down to ambush him. The demon general stands atop the fortifications, rallying his monstrous troops with a promise of imminent victory over the humans. A massive legion of armored demons marches forward, commanded to destroy absolutely everything that stands in their path. The air fills with bloodthirsty roars as the horde surges ahead, eager to crush the human resistance. The advance grinds to a confused halt as the demons notice a high-speed anomaly approaching them from the distance. Ed screams for them to get out of his way, his face twisted in desperation as he sprints at godlike speed. He plows through the demon army like a living cannonball, sending armored bodies flying into the air without slowing down. A swirling vortex of destruction marks his path, leaving the demon ranks in total disarray as he vanishes into the distance. Leaving the battlefield behind, Ed dashes through the dense forest, his breath coming in ragged gasps. His boots pound the earth with rhythmic force, crushing the vegetation as he maintains his impossible pace. Sweat pours down his face as he pushes his body to the limit, focused entirely on reaching his destination. Skidding to a halt, he stares up at a massive treehouse bathed in light, wondering if this is truly the place. Panic suddenly grips him as he clutches his chest, realizing he completely forgot to bring a souvenir for the reunion. Desperate to find something decent, he frantically rummages through his belongings to find a suitable gift. His eyes light up when he finds a stash of orange fruit, deciding it is the perfect offering. He arranges the fruit in a basket with a confident smile, convincing himself that Tia always loved sweet things. Composing himself, he smooths his hair and approaches the door, trying to look presentable for the meeting. His hand freezes mid-knock as a sudden wave of insecurity crashes over him, paralyzing his movement. He questions whether an exile like him has any right to visit, wondering if she will truly be happy to see a troublemaker. Gritting his teeth, he reminds himself that he didn't run all this way just to turn back now. He knocks on the wooden door and waits, but only silence answers him from within. Pushing his anxiety aside, he knocks harder and calls out to see if anyone is actually home. Peeking inside the unlocked door, he calls out a tentative hello, hoping he isn't intruding on an empty house. He stumbles clumsily over the threshold, his basket swinging wildly as he tries to catch his balance. Panic sets in as he rambles out excuses to the empty room, insisting he didn't mean to enter without permission. A figure in the shadows turns abruptly, and Ed freezes as a voice cries out his name in shock. The occupant stares in disbelief, demanding to know who is standing in her home. Tia stares in disbelief at the figure in her doorway, wondering aloud if she is still trapped in a dream. Ed freezes in place, his eyes wide with shock as the reality of the reunion crashes down on him. He softly whispers her name, taking in the sight of the elf standing amidst the roots of her treehouse home. Tia turns slowly with tears in her eyes, asking in a trembling voice if the man before her is truly Ed. Ed smiles awkwardly and greets her, captivated by the familiar sight of her sun-like hair and jade-green eyes. Suddenly, Tia lunges forward with a shout of joy, and Ed realizes with a jolt that she hasn't aged a day in 100 years. She invades his personal space completely, causing him to panic and scream internally that she is way too close. Staring into his eyes, she desperately asks for confirmation that he is actually standing there. Her voice breaks as she confesses that she never thought she would see him alive again. Ed laughs off her dramatic reaction, asking what she means by assuming he was dead. Tia explains that she searched everywhere for news of him after they parted, but his complete disappearance led her to fear the worst. Ed lies smoothly, claiming he changed his name and worked in a different country to avoid bringing shame to the hero's party. Internally, he admits the truth that he actually spent the last century suffering in the white void of the other world. Tia sighs with immense relief, simply glad to know that her friend is safe and sound. She suddenly stumbles and admits she feels dizzy, explaining that she had just woken up when he arrived. Ed quickly offers her the basket of orange fruit as a souvenir and urges her to sit down before she falls. Tia confusedly mentions eating them in a bath, but Ed reminds her that there is no bathtub in this treehouse. She insists that the fruit makes one's skin smooth if eaten in the bath, while Ed argues that they are perfectly delicious eaten normally. Getting flustered, Tia shouts that she isn't lying and demands he try it her way to understand. She abruptly shifts moods and happily runs off to cut the fruit, promising him that it will be super sweet. A heavy silence falls over the room until Tia calls out to him from the other room. She asks casually why his clothes are so tattered and worn out. Ed laughs nervously and fabricates a story about traveling the world just to visit an old lady he used to know. He maintains a gentle smile, hiding the brutal reality of the 100-year journey that destroyed his gear. Tia giggles at his story, leaving Ed to question why he worked so hard if he can't even tell her the truth. She announces she is going to change clothes, and Ed politely agrees to wait before noticing something odd. He starts to speak, realizing a crucial detail about her appearance. It dawns on him that she was wearing her pajamas this whole time. Tia playfully asks if he wants to change clothes together with her. Ed shouts a vehement refusal, declaring he has absolutely no intention of changing his clothes. He recalls how bad he is with women and how Tia's lack of personal space used to leave him shaking in the past. The basket of orange fruit sits on the table, glistening in the light of the treehouse. Left alone, Ed looks around the rustic interior, taking in the reality of Tia's secluded home. He glances at the simple wooden furniture, noting the quiet emptiness of the space. His gaze falls upon a curtain acting as a partition to another room. Curiosity getting the better of him, he pulls back the curtain to peek into the sleeping quarters. He recoils in shock as Tia emerges, apologizing for the wait while Ed screams internally that this cannot be happening. Tia steps out wearing her old adventure gear and asks him with a bashful smile if she looks weird. Ed stares in bewilderment and asks why on earth she is wearing her combat outfit from 10 years ago. Paranoia seizes him as he wonders if she put on armor because she is suspicious of an old friend returning from the dead. Tia beams with a bright smile and demands that Ed take his clothes off immediately, leaving him completely flustered. A rustic wooden sewing box sits open on the table, filled with threads, needles, and tools for mending. Ed focuses intently on stitching the fabric while nervously asking Tia if she is sure the orange fruit isn't sour. Reminding him of his promise, Tia insists that if the fruit tastes bad, he can ask her for anything in return. Ed recoils in terror as Tia leans in with an intense expression and demands that he feed her directly. He protests that his hands are full repairing her clothes and indignantly tells her to eat the fruit herself. Ignoring his complaints, Tia leans forward and bites the fruit piece right off the needle Ed is holding. She immediately puckers her face and screams that it is incredibly sour, accusing Ed of lying to her. Ed panics and wonders if he somehow made a mistake in choosing the fruit, as it was supposed to be sweet. Suddenly, Tia's expression shifts to pure delight as she munches on the fruit, revealing the sour face was just a prank. Ed sighs in exasperation, asking if she thinks playing such childish tricks on him is really necessary. When Ed complains about being toyed with, Tia feigns innocence and claims she was just being affectionate. Ed reflects that despite her youthful appearance, this centenarian elf hasn't changed a bit in 10 years. He acknowledges that she is still the same woman who ultimately exiled him from the hero's party. A sudden realization strikes Ed, causing his eyes to widen in shock as the mood shifts. Ed quickly tries to clarify that he holds no grudge, but Tia interrupts his explanation with a sharp denial. Her voice trembles as she whispers a heartfelt apology for everything that happened. She asks if he came to blame her, but Ed frantically waves his hands and insists that the fault was entirely his own. Tears well up in Tia's eyes as she reveals the devastating truth that she is the only one who survived. Ed freezes, his face draining of color as the weight of her confession crashes down on him. Struggling to process the news, he quietly asks her to explain exactly what happened to the party. Tia begins her story, explaining that they immediately tried to find a replacement for him after he left. She recounts how the recruitment went poorly since they were near the front lines and only attracted glory seekers. The new recruits refused to do menial chores, clashing with the party who just wanted someone to handle the baggage. Desperate, the party hired professional porters, but Tia reveals that about 6 of them quit in rapid succession. Ed is confused by the high turnover, but Tia notes that even the most resilient porter only lasted 3 months. She points out that Ed did everything from laundry to lodging arrangements, whereas the professionals only carried bags. A flashback shows Ed tirelessly washing clothes and handling logistics while the rest of the party rested. She adds that he even cooked for them, highlighting the immense workload he silently shouldered. Ed admits to himself that he only did all that extra work out of a desperate fear of being kicked out for being weak. Tia explains that Alexis mistakenly treated Ed's exceptional effort as the standard and demanded the same from new hires. The flashback reveals a porter angrily shouting that his job description does not include being a personal servant. Alexis yells at the porter to get out, and Tia notes that using Ed as a benchmark only led to constant conflict. Ed looks down sadly, realizing that the party's desperation left them with no patience for anyone else. Tia smiles sadly, admitting that they only understood Ed's true value after they had already exiled him. She bites her lip, the guilt of their past ignorance weighing heavily on her expression. Because no one would take the job anymore, the party was struggling until a mysterious figure approached them. A man wearing a strange mask and a creepy smile offered to carry any luggage and perform any chore they needed. Tia recalls how they gladly accepted his help and finally resumed their journey through the demon world. Tia recalls the terrifying moment they arrived at the Demon King's domain, her face pale as the deep forest finally gave way to their destination. A massive legion of shadow demons rises to greet them, confirming her ominous hunch that a trap was waiting. She stiffens with grim resolve to fight, but the situation instantly spirals out of control due to a sudden betrayal. The mysterious masked porter flashes a twisted, mocking grin as he abandons the party right before the battle begins. The group watches in horror as he disappears in a flash of blue light, stealing all their healing potions and magic tools. Ed listens with wide eyes, sweat beading on his face as the sheer magnitude of the disaster sinks in. He identifies the light as a teleportation crystal, and Tia explains she had distributed them for a worst-case scenario emergency. She admits she entrusted the entire party's supply to the porter to prevent the fragile crystals from breaking during combat. Ed struggles to believe a seasoned traveler would flee so easily, but a darker realization suddenly strikes him. He suspects the porter didn't run out of fear but infiltrated the party specifically to steal their valuable supplies at the critical moment. Ed stands trembling with rage at the table while Tia stares silently at the floor, unable to meet his gaze. Tia explains that without supplies or a way home, they were forced into a desperate battle for survival against the horde. They were instantly surrounded, and Gonzo was struck down when a massive demonic beast ambushed them from behind. The party's formation collapsed completely, leaving the hero Alexis exposed and in immediate danger. In a final bid to save the world's hope, Tia reveals she had hidden one last teleportation crystal inside Alexis's armor. She focuses on the glowing gem embedded in his gauntlet, declaring that humanity could not afford to lose its hero. With tears in her eyes, she apologized to the prince and activated the magic to force him to escape alone. Alexis stood frozen as the spell took hold, realizing his comrades had decided to sacrifice themselves for his survival. He screamed Tia's name, reaching out in desperation as the light began to envelop him. Tia narrates that a true hero would never abandon his friends to survive alone, even if it defied all logic. To her absolute shock, Alexis smashed the teleportation crystal with his bare hand, shattering her plan instantly. He smiled through the pain and blood, rejecting the path of safety to stand and die with his friends. The fragments of the crystal fell from his grasp as the water of the spell dissipated harmlessly. Tia laments that he chose his personal pride over his duty to the world, making the wrong choice without hesitation. She whispers his name with a mixture of heartbreak and admiration, acknowledging his fatal flaw. Alexis declared that if he had to abandon his friends to live, the guilt would kill him anyway. Back in the present, a heavy silence fills the treehouse as Ed and Tia sit under the weight of the tragic memory. The view pans out to the peaceful forest surrounding the treehouse, contrasting sharply with the bloody tale of the past. Ed places a comforting hand on Tia's head, asking if she has finally calmed down after her emotional outburst. Tia whispers a quiet thank you, her voice steadying as she recovers her composure. Ed looks down at her with a gentle expression, silently offering his support while she collects her thoughts. Taking a deep breath, Tia begins to recount the events that followed her escape from the demon world. She reveals that the teleportation crystal transferred her directly to a secret room within the castle of Notland. The king immediately confronted her, demanding to know why she returned alone and what happened to the prince. Suspecting treachery, the king accused her of stealing the crystal to save her own skin while abandoning the hero. Gripping his throne in fury, he screamed for answers about the fate of his son. Tia tightened her fists and forced herself to explain the tragic reality of their defeat to the grieving monarch. The king ordered a cover-up, commanding her to hide in the wilderness and claim the party was completely wiped out. Tia froze in shock, unable to believe the king would erase her survival to protect the narrative. Reflecting on it now, she admits that it was a cold but reasonable political decision. Ed argues that it was the wrong choice for a hero, but acknowledges the king prioritized the world over individual lives. He notes with bitterness that the king chose to sacrifice his son's comrades to preserve the hope of the future. Ed realizes with a somber expression that the king was ultimately respecting Alexis's final wish to save the world. Tia explains that because of her exile, she was unable to participate in the subsequent rescue expeditions. Ed bursts into laughter, teasing her about how ridiculously far away she chose to hide from civilization. Narrations reveal that allied nations sent 3 armies to rescue Alexis, but without a hero, they all failed miserably. Ed explains he found her using a magical search tool, though he playfully keeps his travel method a secret. His expression darkens as he admits that he searched for Alexis and Gonzo, but the tool gave no response. Tia lowers her gaze, accepting the final confirmation that her friends are truly dead. Wiping her tears, she smiles bravely and claims that facing the harsh reality feels refreshing. She reasons that survival would have been impossible against such a massive army anyway. Ed watches her struggle to be strong and softly calls out her name. Abruptly shifting the mood, Tia proudly presents Ed's mended clothes and asks if the stitching is cute. Ed smiles warmly at her handiwork, agreeing that she did a good job. Suddenly, the entire treehouse shudders violently as a massive impact rocks the foundation. Ed scrambles toward the door to investigate the source of the tremor while Tia cries out in confusion. He freezes in the doorway, his eyes widening as he processes the threat looming outside. A massive lesser dragon stands before them, its scales glistening ominously in the forest light. Ed stares up at the beast, bewildered as to why a monster of this caliber is in a safe zone. Tia rushes up behind him, wondering if a stray dragon wandered down from the mountains. Ed screams for her to get back inside the house, desperate to shield her from the danger. Instead of retreating, Tia steps forward with a determined gaze and assures him she will handle it. Magic swirls around her as she prepares to engage the dragon without a hint of fear. Ed gasps in surprise as she confidently declares that a monster like this is a piece of cake for her now. She unleashes a devastating blast of magic, striking the dragon with explosive force. A swirling vortex of water erupts around them, forming a protective barrier between Ed and the battle. Ed stares in awe at the shimmering wall of water shielding him from harm. Tia glares at the enemy with intense resolve, swearing that she will never let anyone die again. Tia chants an incantation, calling upon the feathers of spirits to harden and drop the dull light. Gathering her power, she commands the spirits to surround her and manifest in the name of Lunarisha. Unleashing her ultimate attack, she screams, "Try Edge Stream," to annihilate the enemy. Ed watches in stunned silence as the massive dragon is sliced apart by the invisible blades. He marvels that she cut cleanly through the dragon's scales and bones in a single, instant blow. Panting heavily, Tia turns to Ed and urgently begs him to get out of there immediately. Ed rushes to catch her as she stumbles, asking what is wrong while she collapses into his arms. He holds her trembling body, confused by her weak laughter and her insistence that he leave. Tia tries to brush it off, claiming she is fine and just got a little too enthusiastic showing off. Ed notes that she looks terrible, but she insists it is just fatigue from fighting after so long. Smiling weakly, she claims she just wanted to dress up for him before turning to walk away. Ed watches her retreating back, sighing that she is just as anxious and stubborn as ever. He tries to reassure himself that a former member of the hero's party should be fine despite her behavior. Scratching his head, he decides to process the dragon corpse first before worrying further. Ed plans to butcher the meat for his treasury, but a sudden thud from the treehouse stops him cold. Peeking around the corner, he calls out her name with growing concern. Panic sets in as he abandons the dragon and sprints back toward the treehouse entrance. He stares up at the silent structure, the ominous quiet confirming his worst fears. Shouting a warning, he scrambles up the ladder to check on her immediately. Ed freezes at the top, his eyes widening in horror as he sees Tia collapsed on the floor. He rushes to her side, demanding to know why she fell while she struggles to breathe. His gaze falls on her exposed skin, and he recoils at the sight of the unnatural affliction. Tia lies helpless, her body marred by black bruises that look like patches of dead skin. Ed analyzes the symptoms, noting that the necrosis is spreading from her heart to the rest of her body. Desperate to help, he tries to loosen her clothes, but she screams in panic to stop him. The scene shifts to the quiet interior of the treehouse, the air heavy with the weight of the revelation. Ed sits by her bedside as she wakes, thanking him softly for helping her calm down. Tia confesses that she used a secret elven technique to ensure the party's survival back then. She explains that the forbidden magic works by mixing one's own life force directly with the spell. Ed's face pales as he realizes the terrible price she paid was her own life magic. Tia confirms his fears, admitting that she sacrificed her natural lifespan to fuel the power. Ed argues that she seemed fine until just a moment ago, struggling to understand the sudden collapse. A horrifying realization strikes him as he connects her current state to the battle he just witnessed. He shouts in disbelief, asking if she burned her remaining lifespan just to kill that lesser dragon. Tia smiles sheepishly from under the covers, admitting she did it because she thought Ed would be killed. Ed stares down at her, his heart breaking as he sees the depth of her sacrifice. He questions internally why she would go so far, unable to comprehend that she thought he was still weak. The truth hits him like a physical blow. She sacrificed herself because she didn't know he had become strong. Tia reveals that she didn't have much magic left to live anyway, and her clothes were the only thing holding her together. She explains that the enchanted garments allowed her to survive by sharing the magic gathered by the great tree. Tia whispers that she doesn't have much time left to live. She explains that her desperation drove her to strip off her clothes and unleash the forbidden magic. Ed flushes with embarrassment and demands to know why she suddenly changed her clothes. Tia giggles softly, trying to deflect the tension with a weak smile. She admits she just wanted things to return to the way they were in the past. Smiling through her pain, she confesses that she was simply happy to see Ed again. Her expression falters as she realizes that her plan has seemingly failed once more. She stares blankly at the table, resigned to her repeated failures. Tia reveals that the demonic beast had already detected her presence. She explains that she removed her clothes to release the tree's magic power as a lure. Ed realizes with horror that the lesser dragon attacked specifically because of the magic she leaked. Tia bites her lip, blaming herself for everything and calling herself an ill omen. Tears well up as she accepts responsibility for the disaster. She wonders aloud if this suffering is the price for getting cocky with borrowed power. Ed cuts her off, reminding her that he ran all the way here to save her. He insists that his only goal was to ensure her safety. Tia looks up at him, confused by his intensity. Ed looks away with a pained expression, telling her not to look at him like that. He mutters guiltily that he is the one who should be blamed. Tia gently cups his face, assuring him that she lived her life to the fullest. She admits that while her life was short for an elf, she has no regrets. Meeting Ed again was the perfect end to her journey. She smiles warmly, grateful that she was able to make such good friends. Ed desperately grips her shoulders, shouting that they just reunited and still have a long way to go. He begs her not to speak as if this is the end. A sudden tremor shakes the treehouse as the leaves rustle violently outside. Ed clicks his tongue in annoyance, realizing the enemy reinforcements have already arrived. Tia pushes him away, demanding that he leave her and escape immediately. Ed instantly refuses her order, standing his ground. She argues that he hasn't changed since then and assumes he is still weak. Ed interrupts her plea, firmly denying her assumption. He admits that while his body reverted to its younger, weaker state from 10 years ago, his appearance is deceptive. Ed reveals that he traveled across 100 different worlds during his exile. He explains that he gained a lifetime of experience and worked tirelessly on his own. He declares that he is no longer the same person she remembers from their past. The trials he faced are beyond anything she could ever imagine. Staring directly into her eyes, he states with absolute conviction that he is strong now. He focuses his gaze, his eyes burning with the weight of his 100-year journey. Ed vows to protect her, promising that this time he will not fail. His expression hardens into a mask of pure fury as his eyes glow with unleashed power. He turns his back to her, swearing that he will never let her be alone again. Tia weeps, begging him once more to run away and save himself. Ed glances back with a confident smile, assuring her that he will keep his promise. He steps toward the balcony, ignoring her desperate cries to wait. The situation outside is dire, but his resolve is unshaken. Ed watches Tia struggle to crawl after him, wondering what he can possibly do to save her now. He leaps into the fray, acknowledging that slaughtering the beasts won't bring back the dead or restore her lifespan. As he tears through the enemy ranks, he screams that he knows it's futile but refuses to stop fighting. Ed grits his teeth in absolute refusal, screaming that he will not allow their story to end in such a senseless tragedy. Desperate for a miracle to return him to the past, he unleashes his fury and activates the power of blood swordsmithing. A chaotic vortex of black energy explodes outward, shredding the air with violent, swirling slashes. Ed charges through the storm of destruction, his eyes glowing yellow as he cuts down everything in his path. Silence falls over the carnage as Ed stands amidst the slaughtered beasts, leaving Tia to stare at his back in stunned awe. Suddenly, a realization strikes Ed, causing him to freeze as he questions the nature of the miracle he seeks. He recalls his own words from before, remembering that he saved a specific skill because it was too precious to use until the very end. His mind races as he analyzes the one-time use ability he received, realizing it might be exactly what he needs right now. Hope returns to his eyes as he grasps the true potential of the final exiled skill he was gifted. Staring into the possibility of a new future, he wonders aloud if this power will finally allow him to start everything all over again.